Okay, so one of the classes that I teach is Yearbook, and it's an elective for 10th, 11th, and 12th graders. It's a production class, so we pretty much just work on the yearbook. The first 4 weeks of class, we sort of learn how to do it, but the rest of the year is spent working independently. So what you do is you go out and take pictures of certain events and clubs and all the stuff that goes on around here. And then you go on the computer and we do the yearbook on the Herff Jones e-design site. And basically we just end up, it's different every year, but we end up with this sort of a product. It's a fun class because you get to go out of class and meet people and take pictures and be creative. And plus there's downtime in between your deadlines. There's no homework. It's not a real heavy academic class, but it does let you do a lot of cool creative things. There's a prerequisite for the class, which is your regular English teacher this year has to recommend you for it for next year. So I'm really looking for kids who can work independently and follow through on a project. Yearbook, check it out.
I'm Matt Kennedy, and the elective class I teach is called 20th Century History and the Media. Yeah, I know it's kind of a funny name for a class, but it's a history class where we actually have a lot of fun looking at movies and listening to music and trying to see how popular culture weaved its way into the more conventional history we learn about. And it's a lot of fun to teach, and I think it's a lot of fun for the students to take the class too. It fulfills a half a credit of social studies. Yeah, just like sociology or law enforcement or any other elective in this department would fill. We do some conventional history, but we also spend a lot of time studying like the history of film and the history of TV and you know, things like that. They're a lot of fun. And so if you're a student that has an interest in things like comic books or advertising or movies or music or any of that stuff, if you have that interest already, you'd probably love this class because you get to bring what you like into the class and we share all that stuff and have a lot of fun doing it. Once a week we have a movie night. We can't afford to spend too much time in class watching movies, and so we meet once a week in the evenings. You're not required to come all the time, but it's fun because we have slush and popcorn and watch a feature film in this room that's been set up to watch movies. So it's like going to a theater and watching a movie, which is a lot of fun.
My name is Mr. Hernison, and the electives I teach are Intro to Law and Performance Psychology. Intro to Law, it's essentially a pre-law class. In that class you will learn everything from government structure to where our laws come from, to how we enforce laws, the criminal justice process. So everything from when a crime occurs all the way up through when somebody is set free from prison or the punishment process. What we try and do is train people or educate people who are interested in going into a criminal or a legal field. So that could be into corrections, so a police officer or a lawyer, and there's different kinds of lawyers. So we try and give people a basic education for any of those fields. In sports psychology, performance psychology, it's mostly about sports. I'd say it's about 95% about sports, but the idea is that all of the lessons that we teach in performance psychology, sports psychology, are applicable outside of the sports world. We spend a lot of time looking at or delving into the recesses of your mind, trying to figure out stuff about goal setting, what does success really mean to you? Success on the playing field, how does that translate to success outside of sports or in school? How can you prepare for major competitions and major performance situations? So not only that big game on Friday night, but also how do you prepare mentally for taking a driver's test or taking your SATs or the ACT, or even how to get ready for that great prom night. Okay? So we really spend a lot of time dealing with issues like your confidence levels, how to deal with commitment, how to deal with coaches and teammates when you might be having some kind of psychological issues there. When your team is not getting along really well, what do you do? Okay? When you have an issue with a coach, it's very similar to having an issue with a boss later on, an employer, or a teacher right now. And we want to help educate students on how to deal with that kind of stuff.
My elective is athletic development. It's a class for anyone looking to improve themselves in any type of sport, whether you're a varsity athlete or you're a skateboarder. It's a class that we do a lot of things to make you stronger in whatever you do. Class is a lot of work, but it's a great way to get your workout in during the day. So our typical class period, we start off with our dynamic warm-up, which is almost a workout in itself. We do a lot of movement with that warm-up, not a lot of static stretching, so we're always moving when we're doing that. Then after our warm-up, we go into our next activity, which is usually an agility or a plyometric jumping routine or some sort of small circuit to get just some of the things that's important for an athlete, your speed and agility going. And then our last part of the class, we go in the weight room to do our strength training. And we have a couple specific lifts that we always do that day to get you better as an athlete. It's not really a bodybuilding class, but it's a class to develop you as an athlete. As far as who should take the class, I think anybody should take the class that's willing to work hard. Girls always think they're going to bulk up and get real gigantic and huge, and that's just not the case. A lot of times my girls in my class will actually shrink because they'll gain muscle mass and lose some of that body fat on them, so that's a good thing. Guys, you will get bigger and stronger just by your makeup and the testosterone in your body, and you will get stronger. And again, it's an opportunity for you to get in a good workout during the day, no matter what season you're in. These days, there's no such thing as an off season. So if you're not training all year round, then your competition is getting ahead of you. So this is a great opportunity for you to schedule that into the day and make you a better athlete.
I'm Dave Case, and I teach journalism as an elective. And journalism is a class that is pretty much solely directed toward the production of our student newspaper, the Talon. And journalism's a different kind of class in that I teach history also, and in my history classes, I'll get up and lecture, you'll read a chapter, we'll take a test, that sort of thing. In journalism, it's not like that. It's learning by doing. So you might be assigned or you might choose to write an article about the fashion club. And so you sit down with a classmate and figure out some questions and who you should interview. You ask me for advice, but then you go interview that person. You take the notes. You write the story with my guidance and with my advice, but you're the one figuring out how to do this. And then you submit it to another student for advice and for editing, and they provide advice, and then I provide advice. You have to take pictures. You have to lay out the work on your own in InDesign. You'll need to figure out how to use Photoshop. But all these things you're going to learn by doing it, rather than by me standing in front of the class and lecturing and then giving you a worksheet. You're going to figure it out on your own. So it takes a special kind of student who's pretty self-directed and who can figure things out on their own, but it's also a great way to have a different kind of learning environment where you really get to drive your learning. Skills that are useful in this class but not necessarily required are if you're you need to be somewhat self-directed. It'd be great if you enjoy writing. And if you're somewhat competent at writing, but this will help your writing skills. So if you think this sounds fun, but you're not that confident with your writing skills, we have a spot for you, and we can help you with those writing skills, but you might focus more on the visual aspects of the newspaper. Being a willing and enthusiastic photographer is something that we always look for. Kids who want to take pictures, especially at events. So those sorts of skills are things we're looking for, but really it's just a nice elective to add into a course schedule. I don't think that every class should be taught like journalism is, but to have one class that's like that, it's a really nice balance, and I think a lot of kids learn a lot in there.
So my name's Ted Kramer. I teach an elective class in science called Alternative Energy Resources. The focus of the class is to look at the reason why we need to look at alternative energy resources, and then we go through like step by step looking at kind of all the big resources that are out there that people know. We look at solar power, we look at wind power, we look at biofuels, we look at nuclear energy, we look at wave energy, we look at geothermal energy, and we try and, you know, make some sort of educated decision about whether that energy source could, you know, help us out of the current predicament we're in with burning coal and natural gas and oil for all of our energy uses. The class is very lab-based. We end up making wind turbines, we end up making biodiesel, we make electric motors. So we try and do a number of lab activities. We wire together solar panels and use the solar panels for charging like little electronic devices. We have a bicycle in the classroom where you can charge up your cell phone and stuff like that. And we make smoothies in class sometimes with the energy in the bike charger. So we just try and look at energy overall, what the US is doing with energy, and maybe what we should do to change that to prevent climate change effects. You know, it's for anybody that's interested in alternative energy. And for me, it's the most important thing that kids should understand coming out of high school. You know, I mean, I definitely agree that you should be good at like biology and you should understand physics and all the hard stuff. But as being a taxpayer in the US in the next 30 years, you better understand what's going on with energy, because it's going to be a mess. And everybody should understand why it's going to be a mess.
Hello, I'm Mr. Notaboom, and I teach an elective class called AP Human Geography. And it's a year-long class. Right now I have 2 sections of about 55 kids. And we focus a lot on current issues going on in our world. We talk a lot about population, politics, immigration, how it affects the United States and countries around the world. This is a great class for students who know they want to go on to college. It's kind of an introductory AP class. A lot of sophomores take it, and it gives them an idea of a class they might see in college. They do have the option of maybe getting some college credit if they do well enough on the AP test. There's always at least 1 field trip that we go on, and sometimes 2. AP Human Geography is a class that requires you to do quite a bit of work outside of class. There's reading, there's writing assignments that you have to do. It's not a class that you can just kind of walk through and do really well in. It's something that you need to spend time on. But it's also a fun class, and you learn a lot about what's going on in our world. For example, you may have heard the term like Arab Spring, which is a lot of the North African countries. Their governments have been falling, and we talk a lot about why that is. There's issues going on with China and India and their populations, and how China still has the one-child policy. They're trying to limit their growth, and in countries in Europe, it's just the opposite, where they're trying to increase their population because there aren't enough kids. And so it's kind of a paradox that is going on in our world right now. So those are just some of the issues that we touch on in AP Human Geography, and I'd really love to have you take the class. If you have questions, stop by my room, H13.
Hi, I'm Tom Ames. My elective class that I'm teaching right now is StRUT. It's kind of an introduction to computer technology. In this class, we're working on computers, really learning the parts of a computer and being able to hopefully troubleshoot and fix computers is part of what we do, and also just building stuff from the ground up. We end up building computers in there. As time goes on, we get past that, and we're doing a little bit of programming now. We're using GameMaker Pro as our model for that, and We're going to spend about 8 weeks this year working on GameMaker Pro, and the goal in this year, which may be different as time goes on, but the goal this year is to go to a competition in the spring, have several kids working on that project. And so in the second half of the year, we do a lot of individual projects. Students that probably be successful in StRUT are kids that are not traditional book students for the most part. It's kids who want to do things more, so it's more of a hands-on class. There's not a lot of homework in this class, which a lot of these kids like, that in terms of actually me giving you an assignment and taking it home and doing it. We do most of our work in class, and a lot of it is hands-on. If you're not an independent worker, it doesn't work out very well. So if you need a lot of direction in your life you want to be told what to do and when to do it, and that you need a lot of direction, those kids tend to struggle a little bit. So it's for more of an independent learner. We're also responsible for, we take care of and recycle much of the school's e-waste, and we're in a consortium. StRUT is a national program, and actually in our state, we're located in the Dalles, and we have a large warehouse down there. So we pick up equipment, we break stuff down for them, we take a couple of field trips there a year to work in their lab and also help them out with the recycle effort.
My name is Evelyn Charity, and I teach sociology and psychology, the elective that involves kids and how society impacts them and how you think impacts everybody else. So let's take a look at sociology. Sociology is the study of groups of individuals and how they interact with each other. All of us are part of society, and where we fit in makes a difference. Let's consider a situation. Let's say we ask the question, is it possible for one person to live or die in complete social isolation? That's one of the questions that we would ask in sociology. And if you sign up for that class, maybe you'll get the answer. The second question is, how many groups are there in our society, in our world today? There are so many. If you think about the numbers of groups, it's overwhelming, because we could consider teens as a group, of which all of you are a part. We could consider parents as a group, teachers as a group, gangs as a group, children as a group. Let's talk about culture. Many of us come from many different cultures. We're going to study culture in sociology. We're going to study race. We're going to study all these factions that make up our society and where we fit into it. The second portion of this year of sociology and psychology is psychology, and that's really fascinating because it talks about mental illnesses. And everybody's fascinated with mental illness. It's how our brains are wired and how we think differently based on how our brains operate. So let's think about some mental illnesses that would make you really want to sign up for this class. Have you ever heard of oppositional defiance disorder? Maybe some of you haven't, but if you haven't, maybe you want to learn about it. The basic mental illnesses such as schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, depression, those are the ones that mostly everybody knows about. But do you know about something called somatoform disorder? Probably not, but if you sign up for that class, I'll bet you'll figure out what somatoform disorder is. Multiple personality disorder. Fascinating things that affect a lot of people that we know, and maybe even some of you. So sociology, psychology, maybe this is the elective for you.